Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name is Brian. Today we are taking a look at one of the newer bottles that I had gotten here in the studio recently. I made a poll on Instagram to see what you all wanted to hear about of these two bottles. I got the new batch Brazen from Raconteur Rye, the collab between Dave Jennings and Woodwork Collective, and we also have the Sealbox 15. And there were a lot of folks who wanted to hear about both these products. So we're going to talk about the Sealbox 15 in my next video. The main reason I want to do that is because I want to get a hold of the OKI 15, and we're going to do a comparison with the Sealbox 15, the OKI 15, the Russell's 15. So today we're going to talk about Raconteur Rye. Now this is batch 2. You may have already seen my last video. I'll link it over here. For batch 1, where we talked about Raconteur Rye, 7-year rye, a blend of 3 barrels. So we have a straight 95.5, we have a toasted 95.5, and then we have a Mizunara finished 95.5. I believe those were all put back together, kind of mingled together, maybe a Mizunara oak. And that is what we have here, 61.36% alcohol by volume. Still has the age 7-year of the age statement. I will say, this is the first year that Sealbox has been offered this product, so we were able to put that out, as well as Bourbon Outfitters and some other retailers as well. But I did the video last time because Woodwork Collective, Dave Jennings, they had sent me a bottle, and it kind of got put on the back burner for a while. And once I tasted it, and with knowing how many good ryes there were out this year, I knew I had to do a video of it. That's what I said in my last video. This one's kind of that exact same way. I didn't know if I wanted to do a video on this because I don't really need to. I need to do some tasting notes for the page. But once I tasted this, I wanted to reestablish where I thought Raconteur Rye may fit in my ryes of the year so far. We're not to the end of the year yet. We haven't done some of those. But let's go ahead and dive into this and see what we have to say. We'll compare it to batch 1, maybe some other ryes that I have on the table that I've been thinking about while tasting this one. Go ahead, jump down below, subscribe to the channel, give me a thumbs up. Let me know if you're enjoying the things that I'm bringing to you here on the channel. Let me know your favorite rye that you've had so far this year. Again, if it was not clear, this did come from Woodwork Collective and Dave Jennings. I did not purchase this bottle, and I don't think that's going to affect what I have to say. That said, I want you all to know that so you can make an informed decision on your own. Take what I have to say about any product, throw it against other things I have to say about other products, make your own decision on that. Check out some other reviewers or other things out there and figure out if it's something that you're going to like. There have been a lot of good ryes this year, and let's dive into yet another one of them. There's been so much change in this profile, even from the first couple times of tasting it to the later couple times of tasting it. And that is present on the nose as well as on the palate. My favorite thing about this rye is just how dense, how soaked, how kind of amped up it is. And I would say it kind of shakes off its more intense, spicy characteristics from first pop as it goes through the bottling. And I don't want to necessarily call it intense just for the sake of being brash. I want to call it intense for the sake of just being dense, rich, thick. It has all these really stewed up, soaked up flavors and notes to it, and that's what we're going to tease apart on the nose. Thick caramel sauce, thick brown sugar. One of my favorite things on the nose is this kind of perfumed leather that's in there as well. It's nuanced, it's kind of just tucked in there a little bit. Sometimes you don't necessarily notice it if there's something else that's kind of jumping out, because it is a little effervescent on the nose too. There's a lot of kind of liveliness happening, and with that you get this kind of sarsaparilla, you get a little bit of creaminess. I feel like where on batch 1 I had mentioned that I had kind of these lemon citrus notes, these kind of brighter top note type citrus notes, you get these more toasted orange peel like notes on the nose here. There's some light warm leather as well, but man, it definitely kind of prickles and tingles. There's almost like a white pepper like sharpness to the nose, but not in a negative way. Let's go ahead and dive into the palate on this one. I feel like the palate definitely gives way to more of the toasted notes at first, and in a very balanced way, not in a negative way. It's a big charred wood presence. There's a lot of wood spice. There's a little citrus spice as well, but I feel like the more you chew on it, the more you sit with it, the citrus does draw itself out a little bit more. My favorite thing about this version of the rye versus the last one, it kind of answered some of the issues that I had with the first one. The first one I mentioned, it was good to kind of drink through, but there's not necessarily a ton that you'd want to discover the more you just kind of sit with it and sip it. This one's the opposite of that. I feel like even as I'm processing for this video, you run into these pockets of these quirky, mature oak notes in there. It's not overly oaky like some of the 11 years that I've had, but it definitely has a bit more maturity than you would think from its 7 years of age. It also runs into these really interesting fruit and spice notes that, you know, I think maybe I'm in my head about the fact that Dave Jennings is involved in this project, but it definitely gives me some sweetness and spice that reminds me of Wild Turkey a little bit in that regard. It gives me this confectioner sugar type grape note. We recently were on vacation in South Carolina. We picked up some of the cotton candy grapes for the kids. It kind of gives me something like that, a concentrated sugary sweetness, but also a bit of a fruit skin sweetness as well. It also still gives me some of these kind of playful watermelon and strawberry fruits like I mentioned in batch 1. But what I love about it is that the lingering spice, not only is it dense on the palate like it was on the nose, it's thick and it's chewy. It's got this nice caramel note. It's not quite cola because the brown sugars aren't as rich, but definitely like a simple syrup, like a heavy simple syrup like thickness to it. And then this beautiful spice that it's hard to describe, but it reminds me of Wild Turkey. I feel like sometimes you can pull out allspice, you could pull out nutmeg, or you could pull out pepper or cloves specifically. But sometimes when I'm drinking Wild Turkey, it just comes off as these kind of more complex, nuanced baking spices. And I feel like the spice is similar to that in Brazen, that it is, like I mentioned, in some of the Wild Turkey products. I feel like this is a good pause point to jump over to batch 1, and then we'll kind of quickly compare. I did like batch 1. I felt like it was kind of right middle of the pack from some of the other ryes that I've had. And even coming back to on the nose, it is kind of a softer breadiness on the nose. It comes off a little bit thinner on the nose, like a little bit more two-dimensional. I don't want to say that it's a bad rye because it is not, but I feel like compared to batch 2, batch 1 is a little bit more two-dimensional. You still get this kind of like strawberry cakiness. You still get some kind of orange slice candies. It's a little drier. It's going on the palate. Subtle oak, some of the candied citrus peel, a little bit of toffee. Here I notice more of the toasty effect in the back end, whereas on the batch 2, I notice it more on the front end. My one problem that I really had with it is still kind of there, where it has a lot of brightness. It has this kind of lifted lemon, white pepper type note that continues on. It is a more subtle pour, I think, overall. And I think because of that spice, you notice a little drier lingering in the finish. Let's go ahead and go back to batch 2. I do really like pours like this. Bourbon, American single malt, rye, does not matter. Ones where you can tell there's so much nuance, complexity going on, and sometimes it's hard to tease it out. I have to really sit with something like this to really try and pull these notes apart, whether it be on video, whether it be on written review, because you almost don't want to. You kind of want to just let it be what it is. You want to let the maturity hit. You want to let the density kind of sit on the tongue. You want to just enjoy what it has to offer. And then the spice, you don't even want to tease it apart. You just want it to be what it is. And I feel like that with batch 2. Batch 2 answers all the issues that I had with batch 1. I may have already said that. But not only that, I feel like it just gives a really well-rounded, complex, interesting pour that I do want to sit with. And I think in a blind could go against some of these other things. Let me go ahead and mention a couple of these other things real quick, and then we'll finalize everything on batch 2. Now, I feel like I have to mention the tumbling dice because we've had a couple of single barrels out of tumbling dice, and then the small batch last year was one of my favorite ryes. And so I always kind of compare things to that, especially in this age range of MGP. So this was 8-year MGP. And this definitely has the voluptuousness, it has the thickness and the chewiness like you notice in the Raconteur Rye. Like those are the attributes that I liked about these tumbling dice ryes. But I feel like you lose some of the nuance that definitely comes from what they've done specifically and intentionally with this blend when it comes to the toasting, the Mizunara finish. There is an elegance, there is a complexity, there's a something about this that is not touched in the tumbling dice ryes. And again, only a blind at the end of the year is really going to tell how those fare out. Now, another one I want to bring up is this 11-year Brook Hill. This is the Bedlam. I have tasted a lot of people on this here in the studio, and a lot of folks have gravitated towards this in the mix of some of our Nashville Barrel Company ones. I feel like there is an age, oak, mustiness, depth added to this pour that you lose a little bit in the Raconteur. However, again, like I mentioned when I was doing the tumbling dice comparison, there is just something perfumed and an extra layer added to this Raconteur Rye that even though it's younger, the maturity still can go toe-to-toe with the Brook Hill, even though it doesn't have the bigger oak notes, which might be a huge positive to a lot of people. There is just something about it that is missing in just a straight rye. Summing it all up, I think the Raconteur Rye Batch 2 improves on batch 1 in the areas that I thought that it might have been a little bit lacking. I think it is a really enjoyable sit-down rye, but there have been, I mean, this is the hardest list that I have. I've got about 8 or 9 different lists of bourbons, hard to find bourbons, ryes, finished, craft that tastes like craft, all sorts of lists I've been working through this year. My rye list is the largest one. I have maybe 20 or so products I've put in this list to kind of narrow down, and we're going to find out where this Raconteur Rye lands. The end of the year list is going to be very hard, I think, for me this year, because you have some that are really balanced and dense, like the Raconteur, like the Tumbling Dice. You have some that have this really beautiful oak that I really enjoy, like the Brook Hills, like the Nashville Barrel Company. Then there's some that have these kind of juicy, sweet, fruity type tones, and they're just so different. They're just so much more relaxing, easy, crushable ryes that there's so many different styles. I think it's going to be difficult to really navigate and say what it pinpoints down to. But I wanted to bring that up in this video because a lot of other reviewers are going to have the same type of problems that they're going to be going through while they're placing things. And that's why I suggest to you all, find some reviews that you all trust and really kind of land on what it is that you're looking for in a rye, maybe what you're looking for in a pour, and hopefully they'll help guide you into what you might experience and whether it's a buy for you. I know that this is a bit pricey, 7 years old, $130, $140 here, so it is tricky. However, this is a really enjoyable, well put together whiskey. Off the top of my head, I feel like this would need to be somewhere like the top 5 of my favorite ryes this year. The only thing that I'm kind of curious about is whether I put it into a finish category. That's the one tricky part about this, about the double oaked Pursuit, about K. Luke, some of these things that have the toasting to them. I never know whether I should put them in a general finished category or whether I should have them in the category of the spirit that they are. Let me know down below what your all's thoughts are, whether they should go into a rye category, if they should go into a finished category, if they have some sort of finishing. What's the cleanest way that they can be understood for you all? All that being said, I'm very thankful for the guys for sending me over this bottle. I think this is going to be really enjoyed, especially by the guys who come through the studio and are tasting some of the ryes this year, also trying to figure out if they want to make a good decision. Thanks as always, everybody, for tuning into another video. I hope it was insightful, informational. Again, let's look forward to this Sealbox 15 video we have coming up soon. Hopefully I can get that OKI sample here soon so we can go ahead and get that recorded, ironed out. Maybe you see that video next week. Thanks again, as always, everybody, for tuning into another video. And until next time, we'll see you all later.